This podcast represents the opinions of our hosts and their guests only. The content here should not be taken as medical advice and is for informational purposes only. And because each person is so unique, please consult your healthcare professional for any medical questions. Welcome to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces, a podcast devoted to changing the way eating disorders and mental illness are viewed in our society. With your hosts, Jack and Linda Mazur and Ellen Bennett.
Welcome to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces. How we got here, why it's important, and what's next with Scott Fitzgerald. Scott has been working in media production for over 30 years. In 2017, the planets aligned and he was able to form RockVox Recording and Production, the first podcast studio in Western New York and only the second one in the state. He co-wrote and produced a feature film in 2020 titled Bottom Feeders, which can be seen on Amazon Prime Video. He's the winner of multiple Telly Awards for his production, and he was also named City Magazine's Best Filmmaker in Rochester 3 years in a row. Scott is also the Director of Communications for Sobriety Sounds, a nonprofit organization dedicated to providing a safe space for musicians in recovery to practice their art. RockVox is a member of the Visitor Industry Council, Rochester, and the Better Business Bureau of Western New York. I'm going to start with a quote, and it's from Ram Dass. And the quote is, "Start from where you are. The work you are doing becomes your path." Welcome, Scott.
Hi. It's interesting to be on this side of the glass.
Well,
it's fun to have you part of the fourth.
It's great to be back for season 3. This is season 3 of One Shattered,
season
Picking
3
Up the Pieces, and
seems like just yesterday.
We need to celebrate.
And this is very strange because we're welcoming Scott to his own studio.
Thank you. I like what you've done to the place. Fantastic.
You had no trouble finding your way here today?
No. Well, I did get lost, but that's usual.
We love you, Scott. We truly do.
And I love you. I love all of you and appreciate everything that you've done for me.
Oh.
You know, just not so much just being clients and having a great podcast, but just
so much more than
much more than that.
For us, oh my gosh, you've been a godsend. Absolutely.
Well, and
so many others.
I mean, there's other people that we've gotten to do their Audible books here and podcasts here, and they just said, what a great...
It's like the 6 degrees of the Mazurs, because I think there's just about every one of my clients is connected to you somehow.
Well,
Well, and if you ever need any people in the community to help you out, Scott knows everyone. I mean, and I'm talking all different facets of life. Scott knows everybody.
Yeah, it's gone both ways. He's helped us out, too, with many connections, and so everybody's needs connections.
Each step forward really expands your whole world, and
It's true.
It's wonderful.
So, Scott, since you're our guest today, I have a question for you, and can you tell us a little bit of your backstory and how you got to here today?
There's a time limit, so I'll go for the abridged version. Well, I mean, I grew up in South Florida, so the fact that I'm in Rochester, New York is crazy in and of itself. But I married a nice girl from Webster and got sick of South Florida, and that's why I ended up here. And I love it up here. Yeah. Yes, it's cold and dreary and stuff for a lot of months, but it's just such a great place to live, and the people are so fantastic. I mean, look around this table. I wouldn't know you if I didn't live here, and I definitely wouldn't have the studio and all of the blessings that I enjoy now. So being in Rochester is like a dream come true, and who'd have thunk it? Yeah. If you would have went back to my 20s and told me that I'd be living here, I'd be like, why?
Rochester and a dream come true doesn't often go together.
Not usually in the same sentence.
What city in Florida were you born in?
Well, I was born in Long Island, believe it or not,
but
but I grew up in South Florida in the Fort Lauderdale area.
Oh, okay.
And bounced around in that area.
Mm-hmm. And Kelly you met her down there?
Yeah, she went down there to go to school, and she was the new waitress at a bar that my brother was a manager at. Oh. So I was, hey, my brother's a manager.
Kelly's wonderful
who's
too.
The new
Absolutely.
cutie? Who's the new cutie? And actually, it took about 8 years before we actually got together. We were friends for a long time.
Oh, really?
So that's kind of how that worked out. But all that time that I was in Florida, I was working in video production. I went to school for radio, took an internship in video production, ended up working in video production until I really wanted to change. And that's when I first moved up to Rochester to be with Kelly. And then we bounced back and forth a bunch of times from Rochester back down to South Florida for my work, because she works in medicine. She can get a job anywhere.
Was that before you got married or after?
It was before, during, after. Yeah. Okay. It was all from 2001 to 2007. We moved up, back up. I even lose track. I know the last time that I moved here, because each time my father and my two brothers helped me move. We had this caravan of trucks and stuff driving.
Oh, wow.
The last time they were like, if you move again, we're not helping you. I'm like, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. But I moved up here for a job in advertising, which only lasted about 8 months. I got laid off. It was just 2008. It was the GM tanked, and I was working on GM accounts. And so they got rid of about 15 of us from that crew. And so I was a stay-at-home dad for a while, and ended up here.
You reinvented yourself. You're amazing.
I reinvented myself quite a bit, and not each time was a good reinvention. But that's the thing.
You also had stints on the radio. I mean, because I listen to you talking now, and you just that perfect radio voice.
Should tell the radio people about that.
It's So there's some people that I don't like to listen to, but listening to your voice.
Why? What do they have different voices? Not naming names. Because that was actually my fallback when I couldn't get any video work. It turns out through the filmmaking community here, I knew a guy named Stan Main, and I looked at his Facebook profile, and it said that he was a program director at Stevens Media Group. And I'm like, a program director? That's the honcho. That's the person that hires people. So I reached out to him and I said, hey, you got any openings there? Now, at this point, I'd never worked professionally in radio before. I did a college radio show in 1992, and that was the last time. So he's like, can you jock? Can you be on the air? I'm like, sure. Never done it before. I did my own amateur internet radio stuff, which is just as a goof. But I walked in and he liked me, so he put me on the air. And next thing I know, a couple of years later, I'm doing mornings on Fickle 93.3, which I thought was a really big deal. I'm like, I'm the morning guy.
Yeah.
Turns out it really wasn't as big of a deal as I thought, just because it's a smaller station with a smaller signal, and the company didn't put a lot of money into that station. So it was kind of like I was the best kept secret that nobody knew about.
Were they sold? Fickle, the station, or
not since that Stevens Media bought that cluster in 2007 when there was a big sell off because of the law changing. So that's when iHeart, which was Clear Channel at the time, and it was a big thing that happened in about 2007. So that's when everything changed. But it was a great little group. They ran it like a mom and pop sort of radio station. So it was the best of both worlds. But at the same time, there was no room for improvement or advancement for me. I was never going to get a raise. And actually, during COVID, they cut my pay, which is why I just decided to, jump in both feet here. And I left radio. And I was like, well, going to give it a shot. I was spending the first 5 hours of my day doing something that I love doing, but it wasn't getting me anywhere. Yeah, so I was like, I might as well put that energy here and reap the rewards.
Woohoo! Yeah. We're so glad you did. We needed you.
Absolutely.
There's been a lot of that. It's a lot of serendipity going on, centered around the studio, which I absolutely love.
And what year did you start the studio?
2018.
Okay. So 2018.
So we're coming up on 5 years.
5 years. Wow. So 2020, COVID comes. We're coming up on, But
that was all I can say is I thank the Lord for the Small Business Association and the EIDL loans that they came out with. You know, they had the PPP loan, which was, you know, they would forgive, but it was only for meeting payroll, and it was just me.
Yeah.
And I really at that time wasn't even on payroll. I was just sort of like use the company card to buy gas at that point. Thankfully, my wife does really well with her work, and she's the hardest working person I've ever met. So, you know, thanks to her, I was actually able to do this.
Yeah.
But yeah,
You're a great team.
we are a great team, and it's been, as you know, when you're married for a long time, it's like there's a lot of challenges, and you both have to grow, and if you both don't grow, then the relationship can't get anywhere.
Yeah.
And thankfully, we're both growing still.
She's wonderful too. Absolutely wonderful. You.
And it was, you know, it was nice. I mean, that's when we did the Audible version of the book was during the early part of COVID. And it was nice because we didn't have any contact with you. You were in your glass studio and we were in a closed in room. And it was, it was great.
That was kind of one of the reasons why I was able to technically keep working was because I didn't really have to have contact. I could be like, all right, I'm going to stand back there in the glass, you know, and you put on the headphones. We could talk to each other. It was kind of cool. That and being able to help people, you know, because of COVID, all of this new virtual stuff happened.
Yeah.
So it was really the perfect time.
It really was. And the business model changed for me because before that I was focusing on doing the voiceovers for e-learning and those kind of learning modules. And all of that went away. But virtual stuff and podcasting took over for it. And now that stuff is coming back. So I'm like, all right, cool.
Yeah. Great. So I saw a virtual, we came, I'm sorry, in person down at the Boulder Coffee with Sobriety Sounds.
Yeah.
And these guys are great. You know, they're a great group of musicians and vocalists. And so can you talk a little bit about them and why it's important to you?
Yeah. So Sobriety Sounds is a nonprofit that was created by Matt Hoy, who is a guitar player, singer-songwriter who's in recovery. He's a recovering alcoholic and drug user. And when he was going through his first phase of recovery, and he was going to a lot of AA meetings and different things like that, he noticed that there was, as a musician, there was no place to go for him to play music that didn't have some association with drinking. So if you think about it, you know, the whole sex, drugs, and rock and roll thing, there's a reason why people say that, because it's true. If you play music, where do musicians play? They play in bars. What do bars sell? You know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's not like you can go touring libraries as a musician. So he discovered this, and it's kind of a sad story that a guy who was with him on that journey, who ended up passing away, it wasn't until Matt went to his funeral that he realized that this guy was a guitar player, and that never came up in the time that they spent. They would spend like the whole day drinking coffee and focusing on staying sober, and never even saw the connection with music. And so he figured out that that'd be a great thing to do. So he created this nonprofit, and the ultimate goal is to have a facility centrally located, or at least on the bus lines, so that musicians can come, check out a guitar, check out a keyboard, plug in, go to a little area, write music, record music. We have all these great notebooks with Sobriety Sounds stamped on it that you can get, and you can write, you know, whatever you want to do. We have Matt put together. He got. This guy's amazing. What he got from various software companies, he got all these software companies to donate the recording software and the different plugins that you need. And he put together 10 laptops with all of this software so that someone could just go and check it out and sit. And we're talking about thousands of dollars worth of technology that someone can have access to. Because the power of music, speaking for myself, I know that in some of my lowest and darkest times in the past, it's usually been music that has been able to keep me on the right path, or at least help me feel better. Mm-hmm. You know, you put on that song that
awaken you.
Yeah, there's a one song that you love that makes you feel happy, and you play it over and over and over because it's the only thing that works.
And Linda hates that one song. Because it's,
it's Hotel California.
Hotel California by the Eagles. Yeah.
This
Sometimes
whole concept
take it easy,
is just so incredible because there's so many healing parts to it, and the connections that Sobriety Sounds is making, and the opportunity and the hope is incredible. It's like, wow.
Music is a form of communication that raises your vibration, right?
Yeah.
It does. It kind of propels you into a different space, and it's a healing space, And
it can be that link to bring you out of some dark places, and especially if you have the gift of music, and you can write or you can play, and music, you can do, and to have access. Because I'm sure when you're in your process of recovery and things, you may not have as much access as you used to have. And also finding that community that we also talk about all the time is so,
and music
so
is
powerful.
Music is poetry, too. When you think about people who are writers, and then you think about poetry, they have so much less space to get their point across. Yet, when those words are strung together to music, and you think about different times in your life, right? And you go back, you hear that music that got you through a tough time, or where you were extremely, you're right back there again. And it's so cathartic, and it's so wonderful that people are realizing the healing properties of music. And it's always been like that. But now, for somebody who's struggling with any form of substance use, you got to be able to find those good times again, and you got to be able to feel the hard times too, and music is perfect for all that.
Well, there's so many things in our lives that we learned, through school and everything, that you forget. But songs, you can just sit here and think of a song for me from the 60s, the 70s, and I can just,
You're instantly transported back to the time when that song meant something the most, Yeah. Yeah. It's the same, it's like, it's the senses. It's like whenever there's a smell, you catch a smell, and it's like, oh, that reminds me of when I was a kid, or, and the music is the same way for me. And Ellen was talking about connections earlier, and the interesting way on how I met Matt was that we were making bottom feeders, and one of my second assistant director is a guy named Biz LaChance, and he said, "Hey, a buddy of mine plays music. You should put his music in the movie," which we ended up doing. But it was see, I'm the guy that don't have my phone up. But when I ended up talking to him, he somehow I saw a post or something about what he was doing, and I was like, "Hey, I want to be a part of this." And I'm like, I don't know how I can really help, except for I have all this, and we can utilize this in some way. Let's do a podcast. Let's make videos. I know a lot of people in media. I can reach out, which unfortunately is changing, is a lot of the people that I was friends with are leaving the television. So now it's like a whole new class of plebes. I'm like, I don't know these guys.
There has been an upheaval, for sure.
Yeah, the landscape is definitely changing.
Wow, yeah.
But it's all been fun.
How would people be able to find out more about Sobriety Sounds? And maybe what's an event that's anything?
That's a great question. I would just say go to sobrietysounds.org, and you'll find out all the information there. Right now we're in the middle of sort of figuring out our way, because we don't have a facility yet, but we are going to various rehab facilities and hosting these drum sessions and these music nights with the patients. and the residents, and it's really, really popular. So we come in with a bunch of like percussion instruments or guitars and various instruments that people can play. And he brings stuff that you don't have to know how to play to join in with. And the favorite one is this little frog. It's this wooden frog. It's a hand carved wooden frog, and it's got like a bumpy back, like an alligator type of thing. And it's got this little stick, and it's hollow. So you tap it, and it sounds like a cool little drum, and then you can like rub it on it, and it goes quick, quick, quick. You can make like 50 different sounds with this little frog. And it's like, it's the most popular in all these places. So that's just that, be able to bring the joy and seeing their eyes light up and see everybody interacting and almost forgetting where they are and what they're going through in their lives and what they're trying to forget.
Yeah.
They're forgetting it just for that brief period of time.
Wow, how wonderful.
So varietysounds.org.
That's great.
Incredible. I'm just so inspired to know that it exists and it's out there, and that they're going into treatment centers and connecting with those individuals and bringing this powerful experience. Thank you.
Well, it goes right back.
It
goes right back to our quote: "Start from where you are, and the work you are doing becomes your path." And as in the bio for Scott, things align in ways that you could have never imagined.
Absolutely.
And while we talk about paths, I mean, think about the paths that brought all four of us to this table, right?
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Ellen, Canby for Answers, your daughter Katie.
Yes.
Tell me that story.
Well, my sweet angel Katie was first, I'm going to do a really quick. First diagnosed with anorexia at age 11 and ended up being hospitalized. It took 3 years for her to stabilize, and then she was in 8 years in strong recovery, graduated high school, went to Syracuse University at the eye school, received a full scholarship for her master's. So she's that classic description of these incredible individuals that light up the room and are a force and impact others. It's kind of the universal description. And then very quickly after graduation, I noticed some behaviors that were very concerning, and kind of said, "Hey, Kate, how are you doing? What's going on? And are you happy?" And she basically said, "Mom, back off. I'm 22 years old. Step back, Mom. I got this." Well, she didn't have it. And probably by that point already, the eating disorder, anorexia, was raging again. And she was of an age where she could refuse intervention and treatment. In 2013, her heart stopped as a direct result of anorexia. So through that journey, it is now over 20 years since she was first diagnosed. So I have a whole lot of lived experience with the good, the bad, and the ugly. But what has the little shining star that's come out of all of that experience has been K&B for Answers, which is in her memory. And our basic mission is to raise awareness, support training, and assist anybody who's impacted by an eating disorder. Because through my journey, I realized how much I didn't know in the midst of it, and how much I found out after her death. And one of those really recent kernels of information is that when you talk about anorexia, one of the key points is that the individual does not understand how sick they are. And that was I heard that within the past 8 weeks. That's the first time I've ever heard that. It makes perfect sense to me. And it's specifically connected with anorexia. So when you look at that piece, I know, living through my experience with her, she had no idea. no idea. And her heart at the end, her heart could have stopped at any moment. And so for the past 10 years, I've been spending time putting the pieces together and understand. And as I understand through engagement with local organizations, research, attending conferences, I'm beginning to understand the severity of eating disorders and beyond, which is my experiences with anorexia. But now, as I dig deeper into that, eating disorders are so painfully prevalent across all spectrums. And the lack of awareness and understanding still continues to be a problem. And which spurs me on in our mission to make sure that you keep the conversation going. You keep talking about it. You keep saying it's real. And to just make people aware that it's happening every day. People are dying every day. And if I connect it to COVID, as COVID was on the rise, mental health issues are on the rise and are continuing to rise. And what we know is eating disorder diagnosis is increasing exponentially. And so all of these things come together and it creates a passion for being here today, talking about issues, mental health issues, substance abuse issues, eating disorder issues, because all of us need to become so much more compassionate. And I really encourage everyone to educate yourself about the realities of mental health, because we're all impacted by them, each and every one of us.
Everybody knows somebody. I mean, through all our journey, through our path with Emilee, our daughter, and eating disorder, and since, you just talk to people and go, oh, I know somebody. Oh, I suffered myself. Oh, my sister suffered. So everybody knows somebody. And, with all mental illness.
Well, Jack and Linda, that's how I came to know you, is because you wrote a book about this experience, and you came to do the audiobook.
Yes. I remember, writing the book was cathartic and wonderful and difficult, but it was a story that we had to get out there.
Well, Emilee wanted,
and that was Emilee's last wish.
It was her last wish before she passed. She wanted her story out there to hopefully open some eyes and change some things so that somebody else wouldn't suffer like she did.
Now, was it the same as with Katie, where she really didn't have any idea of how sick she was?
That's. I think she knew how sick she was. I don't think she knew that death was so close, even though she said she did. I think her situation was different than Katie's. Her body was really breaking down for quite a while. She was the person that everybody thought she had it made. She was bright, and Katie was all those things too, bright, and
all these people.
Right.
They really are.
But the thing is that she had it for a while as an adult, and things started to fall apart, and then she lost the ability to work. She did amazing things, but she lost her sense of self, and it was a different circumstance. And I lost my train of thought. I lost my train of thought. What I was going to say.
As Ellen said, Emilee wanted to do it on her own. She was officially diagnosed at 25. Was it going on before that? Likely. But, by the time you realize somebody has an eating disorder.
They've had it for a long time.
They had it for a long time. It just, you can't tell sometimes somebody has an eating disorder just by looking at them. And through her high school and college days,
aren't they traditionally really good at hiding it, really good at masking it?
Absolutely.
Because they are. They're wonderful, bright people, and it's, you wear baggier clothes, But at some point, You can't. I mean, and people can manage things sometimes and keep them at bay. But for some people, it just takes on a life of its own and certainly has the ability to take a life.
But
so
Emilee knew how sick she was.
Right.
I mean, she, at 29, she reached out for help, and she knew the path she was going down wasn't good. The eating disorder was taking over her life and affecting her ability to work, and so she reached out for help, and unfortunately didn't get that help from the insurance companies that cut her off after 5 days of treatment. So
gaining 2 pounds, and they said, "You can go now."
Yeah, that part of the story just bothers me so much, and I know that everybody has a similar gripe with this system.
Yes.
And how things are arranged and put together and everything. But the most inspiring part about all of this is that all three of you took this situation, this tragedy, and made it your mission to make it positive in some way, to help people so that other people can be saved, so that other people will learn and not fall victim to it and not have to go through this.
That's all you can do.
You can't go back. We can't go back and fix anything. So we just have to move forward and try to, like Ellen said, increase the awareness, the education of the medical community. Ultimately, my goal is to get an insurance company on board, and involved in this conversation.
Lots of insurance companies.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
and Medicaid, Medicare. Yeah.
The reality is that denial of treatment, that denial of continued treatment, the nobody is allowed to stay long enough to completely recover. And what we know now is it can take years, and that step down treatment is the way to go. You start where the need is most, and then you either reduce the level of support or you increase the level of support. And unfortunately, that is only happening for a select few. And then when you stop and think of the people who don't have insurance or have minimal insurance, they got nothing.
Right.
And they got nothing. And no one is immune from an eating disorder.
No. And they want to get better, but, they want to, these are adults that, graduated high school, graduated college, got a degree, had a job, maybe had a family and everything. And then this disease, the longer it goes, the more ingrained it gets. It just takes that life away. And so they can't work anymore. And they end up on Medicaid and stuff. And then it's almost like they're forgotten at that point. People, give up on them because of that. So,
well, that's why we're all doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
And, there's a much better chance if somebody develops an eating disorder as a child and they get the right levels of care, the appropriate levels of care, that this won't happen. But sitting right across from me is Ellen Bennett, and her daughter Katie was amazing, and she was diagnosed and got good care, the best that you could get at the time, right?
Absolutely.
And she's not here now. So it's a very, very serious illness, and it needs to be taken more seriously right from the get-go.
It's the same with the eating disorder. We're all about recovery, okay? But there has to be that continuing connection. I saw the whole thing about the guy that started AA, the documentary on him.
Yeah.
Fabulous that was, Bill
W.
Yeah,
I don't remember his last
W.
name. I don't remember
I think
his
he
last
just
name.
goes by Bill W.
Bill W.
It was a great documentary.
And it's all about connection with people who understand. And that's why we started the Emilee Connection, our nonprofit last year. It's all about connection, and all the people that we've met through these years. You guys, sitting at this table are Emilee Connections. And people need connections. There's whether it's any mental illness, we focus on eating disorders. So many people move on and drop off the radar. the friends, they move on, they have families, and they don't understand what the person's going through. And,
well, that's why we are focusing on adults with eating disorders, because they are so under the radar, and most of them have fallen through the cracks already. And some people aren't diagnosed and don't develop an eating disorder until they are adults. So it's a whole set of different circumstances, and that's why the Emilee Connection is focusing on peer support groups for adults with eating disorders and separate support groups for their family members to learn how to better support them.
Is it difficult to set up? So I'm part of a nonprofit, but I didn't set it up or not part of that whole process.
Well, here we go again with an Emilee Connection. There was a woman who read our book who contacted us immediately the next morning, or I think she wrote the email that night. And her name's Betsy Brunner. You know her.
Yeah.
She wrote her own book, The Longest Match, because she suffered with an eating disorder in midlife. And so
Scott didn't know her at the time.
Yes, I didn't know her.
You know her now.
I've come to know her.
You know her now, yes. But yeah, and Betsy was great. She's been a connection since 2019. And so this past year, we did the book, we're doing the One Shattered podcast, and the third thing we thought about was starting this nonprofit. So we just bounced it off Betsy. She's a lawyer. She doesn't practice anymore. So we're thinking about this nonprofit. And she said, well, let me talk to Jeff. He's her husband, and he's a lawyer. And so he ran it by his firm, and by the grace of God, they agreed to do it pro bono and
nice.
did the work for us. And
well, that was just so generous and so wonderful.
Oh my gosh.
But at the beginning of all this, that connection was really interesting too, because Betsy grew up in Rochester but hadn't lived here since she was in high school. And she didn't have any eating disorder connections. And I said, well, we're pretty connected in the Rochester area. Why don't you, come up and I'll introduce you to the people that we know. And she did. She came up and we went around and checked out the Healing Connection and told her about the Western New York Comprehensive Care Center for Eating Disorders, had a picnic at our house, and it was great. And you don't expect anything from it, just being able to share what you know. Well, yeah. She's been part of every major conference, and then her husband comes along and does this, and they become wonderful friends. But you would have never dreamed that something like that would happen. Betsy's wonderful. We're doing virtual support groups right now. We just started for adults. We're doing them in a series, for 5 weeks at a time. So that's been really great. So, yeah.
I think one of the things that's notable is that so much of the push forward for eating disorders has been initiated and done by parents, and primarily by parents who have lost. Anna Weston, who lost her daughter across, and I'm specifically referring to the U.S., and as well as individuals who have lived experience. So without this grassroots movement of saying this is real, this is concerning, and the connections that we've made within our small community, within our state, within the country, has really, we're part of a movement that is essential and critical. And I'm very similar to any other mental health issue that happens is we've got to stand up and say, we have to do more, we have to do better.
Right.
Everybody's impacted.
Yeah. Most of the national organizations, were started or headed by people who had lived experience. Yes.
Absolutely.
So I just say, large, small, we're all better together, and we need to get the word out there and stay together on the mission.
So how are you going to do that? You've got the podcast, which is a great first step, or I don't know, fifth step.
I remember after we finished recording the audiobook, you said, you ought to come back and, do podcasts. And I'm like, yeah, right.
Well, I was really touched by your book. I was the first person to get to listen to it. and I could see how difficult it was for you just to read some of those passages. And I thought about that but what I got from it was that more people need to hear the story. More people need to know and frankly be outraged by some of the things that you all went through with the medical community and the insurance
nightmare.
Nightmare. Thank you.
That people are dealing with. I mean, not just with mental illness, but all disease. I mean, the insurance companies they run everything, and doctors are so frustrated with the system and stuff. So,
but mental health has just been.
There's not cracks anymore. There's chasms
in this
system.
mental health system. It's not really a system. So, yeah.
So,
well, I will say.
I just wanted to say that for those who don't know, the name of the book was Emilee, Emilee, and then the subtitle was The Story of a Girl and Her Family Hijacked by Anorexia. So,
my comments exactly about your book.
Yeah.
And for me, having my lived experience, it was very difficult for me to read. And I don't need to say any more, but being able to listen to it and hear your voices, I would listen to the entire book, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. So just another reason why. Yeah.
We don't want to do it. We don't like our voices.
Oh, just absolutely wonderful. And so, yeah.
Yeah, it makes it, the connection is that much stronger when you hear the voices of the people who lived that experience.
Yes.
We did a library talk in Pittsburgh on Sunday, and somebody said the book is like, and she's read it, I guess. I don't know if she listened to it, but she's read it multiple times. She says, it's like a warm hug.
A warm blanket, a warm hug.
Yeah.
She said, that was nice.
Well, so because we're coming up on time here.
Yes, I know we're running low.
Which I didn't start the timer, but I've been keeping track. What's in store? What's in store for season 3 for Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces?
Oh my gosh. For season 3, we have so many wonderful people lined up. We have 2 authors that will be joining us. One has written a book about healing from trauma, and she also will have a new book out by that time. And trauma is the buzzword right now. So many more people affected by trauma from so many different things. The other is a writer with her second book coming out too, and her focus is self-compassion when dealing with difficult situations or when a child or a loved one is struggling with a substance use disorder or more. Yes, and there's one more thing that I want to say is that I'm taking a course now from CMC Foundation called Invitation to Change, and it is an amazing course, and it's developed for people who have substance use disorders, alcohol substance use disorders, but it can be used for anyone dealing with, and it certainly will. A lot of it will work with eating disorders.
Well, I've been in the other room listening to it, and everything they talk about, I can just say, just put an eating disorder in there, into that.
So it's
as opposed to substance use, because it all fits.
So Invitation to Change is run by CMC Foundation, and it's a holistic approach and framework based in science and kindness, designed for families and loved ones of people struggling with substance use, and as well as for the professionals that support them. So I am loving the training. I'm doing the professional training, and I'm doing the family training, and I'll be able to run groups, and I can use it in our groups because my heart just goes out to anybody who struggles with any sort of substance use issue, because nobody chooses to do those things. It's just a perfect storm of things that happen to them. So anyway, then Alan can tell us about the next podcast coming up after the first 2.
Okay. One of our guests will be a woman who's in her 80s. And when one of her daughters was a young teenager. She was diagnosed with an eating disorder. So we're talking back in the 70s. So she will share her journey back then, which will be, it is powerful and enlightening. And I'm excited to have her. Before I go, because we're winding down to the end, I got to say something about KMB. On May 5th, we have a conference coming up with Whitney Trotter, who's a dietitian, a consultant, and an expert in Black and Brown communities and trauma. We're so excited to host her. More information will be coming. And
it's May 5th, 2023.
Woohoo!
And the info will be in the show notes.
It'll be okay. And just day-to-day involvement is reaching out to individuals and through our website and Facebook and community connections, as well as talking at schools and colleges and anyone in the community who wants to start the conversation or learn more. We have other resources. We support clinician training on eating disorders so that we have trained professionals who are working with individuals who are diagnosed. So there's so much that as nonprofits we can do to support our community.
And if anybody is listening in Boston or knows somebody in the Boston area, on May 12th, Linda and I are speaking at the MEDA conference, the Multi-Service Eating Disorder Association conference. And we were so honored to be picked to present at that conference. So look forward to meeting a lot of new people in the eating disorder community in the Northeast region.
So getting back to our lineup of podcasts, and we are very excited about that.
Yeah.
Thrilled to be included. But for our next podcast, a hometown friend of mine will be joining us. While healing from grief, he found a new beginning through unique music and unique instruments. He's well known, famous in his own right, and has performed throughout the U.S. and Europe. And he has even played at Steven Spielberg's home for a party a few years back.
Did they have to blindfold him to get him there, or just didn't know how to get back?
Where did he just played someplace out in California.
Yeah, so I'm excited for you to meet him too, Scott. He's a pretty awesome guy. So I'm not dropping any names just yet. We're gonna.
He plays some interesting instruments.
Hong music. Hong. So we'll tell you.
I don't know. That sounds cool.
Yeah.
And then we have an episode with an important conversation about depression and PTSD and the cathartic effects of writing for our veterans. And this is with a former military wife, now the wife of a veteran, who shares her love of writing and witness the healing effects of writing on many of our veterans.
Very cool.
And Ellen, I think Ellen.
Okay. Another topic we will talk about is yoga as part of the healing process through meditation, relaxation, and acceptance of where we're at in the moment. So we have so many great things coming ahead. We have not listed everything. There's more to come.
Right.
And we're excited to be doing year 3.
So do you want to tell them about our next podcast, Jack?
So this is the first episode of season 3, but the next episode will be a lovely young woman who we met on a trip to Rhode Island back in 2022, who's going to share her struggle with her eating disorder and how her path to recovery included theater and, once again, music. Right? She has her own practice now in Rhode Island as a therapist. So
nice. Love it.
So what's up for you, Scott?
For me? Sorry. Am I supposed to say what's coming up for me?
I don't know. Do you want to share anything? For you or for Sobriety Sounds or this wonderful studio?
Right. Well, I mean, for Sobriety Sounds right now, we're just trying to build. We're applying for grants. We're looking for facilities. We're looking to make relationships with recovery facilities and outpatient facilities and things like that so that we can get in there and help people and just getting the word out. Rockvox, there's tons going on. Tons.
That's good.
Go to rockvox.com and you can see what's happening.
That's good.
Ellen, is there anything more that you wanted to say before we get ready to sign off here?
Yeah, the last thing I want to say is that often eating disorders have comorbid conditions that are mental health conditions, whether it's substance abuse, alcohol, anxiety, depression, or other mental health issues. So they don't, generally speaking, don't stand alone. And so again, why this conversation is so important.
So we're just all connected in the mental health field. Everybody's connected because everybody knows somebody. We're going to go to Albany next week and advocate for funding for the Western New York Comprehensive Care Center for Eating Disorders, which is a wonderful resource here in Rochester. And when we go there and talk to the staffers or the politicians themselves, everybody knows somebody.
Yeah. Connections.
Yes, absolutely. And we can all keep learning and do better, and it's so important how we talk to each other and the way we talk to each other, and especially the way we talk to our loved ones who are struggling with mental health issues, be it eating disorders, be it substance use disorders. We just have to be open and be good listeners too. So
please rate, share, review, subscribe to Once Shattered, Picking Up the Pieces on the podcast or platform you are listening to. Thanks so much.
And thank you, Rockvox Recording and Production and sound engineer Scott Fitzgerald, sitting right across from us today, for being our special guest and for expertly producing our podcast and so much more.
And remember, Rockvox is the only place to record your podcast, record your audiobook, or do a legacy cast for your loved ones. And thank you, everyone, for listening, and look forward to being back.